Good morning, class. It's me again. Not in the lab this time. They actually sent me to China. Can you believe it? Look. As you can see, there is nobody out here because of the virus. But they sent me here to do some more research to see what's going on with the coronavirus because I heard that a lot of these kids want to go back to school. I want to go back to school too. But anywho, when I get an update, I will let you know. Okay? Good morning. I'm back. All right. So, just to go over what was going on yesterday. Yesterday, we started to talk about the political change and the social change in England. A lot of you guys struggled with some of the questions. It could have been because maybe we're not in person. Maybe it's through the videos. You're not understanding what's going on. But please let me know if you guys have any questions. I think I provided a lot of the answers for you guys in the feedback when I returned your questions. But if you have any questions throughout the day, please let me know and we can go ahead and get to it. But anyway, I hope you're keeping safe and staying updated with CNN 10, the coronavirus, and everything like that. It is getting crazy, so just bear with us. And hopefully, we can come back to school soon because I know you guys miss school and I do miss being at school with you kids. But anywho, for today, we are going to talk about a war called the Hundred Years' War that lasted for 100 years. We're going to talk about this really cool girl named Joan of Arc, who was the savior for France. So we're going to talk about that. But before, we are going to go ahead and review what we learned yesterday. Okay? So yesterday, how did the Magna Carta and the Parliament limit the king's power? First off, the Magna Carta was this document that the king was forced to sign, and pretty much what it did was it limited the power of the king by making the king follow all the rules as everybody else. So the king couldn't do whatever he wanted anymore. Everything that he did, he had to obey the law. Parliament, on the other hand, they limited the king's power because now the king couldn't do whatever the king wanted. The king needed to have approval and get the votes from Parliament in order for any law or anything to pass. So that's how both Magna Carta and Parliament limited the king's power. The second question, the creation of Parliament was a step towards the creation of democracy. You have to remember, democracy is power to the people. And the way the creation of Parliament, what it was it was a group of regular people that got elected. And these elected people were able to vote and take votes, just like how we do it today in the United States. And they were able to vote and decide on what the king gets to do. In the United States, we have the president and we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. Those people, the House of Representatives and the Senate, represent the people, and they vote for what the president can do. So the same thing in England. We had the king, aka the president, and then we had Parliament, aka Congress, or the House of Representatives and the Senate. Number 3, how did the habeas corpus affect the rights of citizens? What this did was, it was this new law that was put in place that said that the king could not put you in jail or punish you for no reason. So now if you were going to get put into jail or get punished, the king had to have a reason, and it had to be a valid reason. It couldn't just be because the king didn't like you. It had to be because you were breaking the law. This was also another way that limited the king's power back in the day. So today, like I told you, we're going to learn about this thing called the 100 Years' War. And once again, Natalia, for you, today's objective for the day is we're going to be able to explain how the 100 Years' War led to political changes in both England and in France. So let's get to it. So the Magna Carta, even though it changed how the government was getting ran in England, it really only affected England because they only had the King of England sign this Magna Carta. All the other countries, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, none of them had their king sign this thing called the Magna Carta. So it only affected the people in England. So all the other kings that were outside of England and throughout Europe, they still were able to rule however they wanted with as much power as they wanted to. They can do whatever they wanted. And because of this, it sparked a lot of chaos. And the kings were still fighting for power. And kings were still doing whatever they felt like they wanted to do. So the battle is going to begin in France. So remember, anytime a king or somebody in charge dies, the way it worked was their son or their nephews or their daughters would take charge. For this instance, the King of France in 1328, he died, but he had no sons. he had nobody to take his throne. So when this was happening, it was like a free for all. Everyone started to fight for who was going to become king, who was going to get in charge, and all these fights and battles started to happen. So these kings decided, if we can prove to everybody else how powerful we are, then maybe we can become the king of France. So eventually, after all the fighting, it ended up being a French guy and an Englishman. They were both fighting to become the king of France. So the English king, he wanted to be the king of France because he wanted his powers back. He didn't like how his powers were going to be limited if he became the king in England. The king of France was saying, there's no way a person from England can rule France. I'm French, I should be able to be the king. So what happened was they began to fight when this English king invaded France, and he just started to wipe out every single kingdom in France. And all these battles, this battle went on for over 100 years, where those kings were fighting, then their sons were fighting to become kings, and then their sons were fighting to become kings. So this battle became known as the Hundred Years' War because it went on forever between these two families, the English and the French families, and they were all fighting to become the king of France. So after about 100 years of fighting, the English were pretty much dominating the French. Um, the English were just powerful, more strategic. They had more people, and they were just killing and destroying all of France. And after this 100 years, finally someone stepped up that was French and was like, "No, we can't do this anymore. We have to stand up for our country. We got to rally and we got to fight back because this is our country. If we let the English take us over, then we are no longer going to be French. We're going to be English." So, believe it or not, it took this girl, a teenage peasant girl. She was about 13 years old. Her name is Joan of Arc. And this peasant girl, not very important. She just stood up for what was right. She was tough. And people liked that she was tough. And just believe it or not, she was your age when she was doing this. So that's her in the picture. And pretty much what she did was she rallied all these troops, and she was able to pretty much fight off the English. Although that she was eventually captured and killed by the English. She was captured and killed by the English, but when she got captured and killed, she nearly drove or fought every English person out of their country. So when she died, there was little to no English people left. And the French people were loving her. They're grateful for her because she was defending France. And she was the reason why the French king was able to win and pretty much not let the English take over France. So pretty much Joan of Arc, she was a really cool and a really strong young teenager, just like you girls are. So as a result of the war, there was two things that happened. The first thing that happened in England was Parliament became to have a lot more power. And the reason why Parliament started to get more power is because the king needed their approval. So the king needed Parliament's votes in order for any of this war to happen. And the Parliament was the ones that were raising the money, they were paying for their debts, they were passing laws, taxing the people, and all of this was because the people were doing this, and Parliament started to get more power. But because Parliament was gaining more power, this meant that the kings were losing a lot of power in England. So in England, the kings were losing power, and Parliament was gaining power. In France, it was the opposite. The kings grew in power. And the reason why is that the kings were fighting in the wars with everybody else. It's like you have a leader that's willing to go and fight with you, you're going to respect that king. And you're going to do whatever it takes for that king to win or to be on that king's side, because the king was a man of the people. He says, if we're going to defend France, I'm going to help you defend it. So this king became real popular with the nobles, and his nobles served these kings even after the war, because they said, if this king is going to fight for me, then I'm going to fight for the king. So the kings in France, their power grew. So just to give a quick recap of what we were talking about today, we were talking about 100 Years' War. And in the 100 Years' War, it all happened because in England, the Magna Carta was limiting the king's power. In France, one of the kings died, no sons, nothing. So it was left for whoever's the strongest and whoever wants to take the throne. Two guys wanted to take the throne, a Frenchman and an English guy. And this English guy went and he was going to invade France because he decided, if I invade France, and I can take it over. So they went on for war for about 100 years, and about 100 years later, this girl, teenage girl, Joan of Arc, decided, you know what, forget this. We got to stand up for our people, and we got to fight back because we do not want to be ruled by an Englishman. So Joan of Arc, she was one of the girls that kind of saved and ended the war. Although she was captured and killed, she pushed out a lot of the English people, and France was able to stay in power. As a result of this, in England, Parliament's power rose because they were the ones that were making decisions for the king and raising the money for the war. And the king's power in England decreased because Parliament was the one deciding what to do. In France, it was the complete opposite. The kings rose in power and they got more power because they were respected and they were fighting on the front lines, and they gained, the people saw that they were with the people and the people wanted to back them up. So they said, if you're going to fight with us, I'm going to back you up no matter what. So England, king's power decreases, and in France, the king's powers are increasing. For homework, I want you guys to answer these three questions. How did the governments of England and France change after the war? Think about the results of the war. Number two, who rallied the French troops during the 100 Years' War? Think of that really cool teenage girl that led them out. Number three, how did the Magna Carta affect the way kings ruled outside? So the Magna Carta only was in England. So how did the kings rule outside of England? All right, so today we learned about the 100 Years' War. Hopefully, you guys don't have any questions. If you do, you can always Google it, watch a video on it, or you can just send me a message and I can always get back to you through the Google Classroom. If you have no questions, don't forget to subscribe because Alonso says I'm going to be the next YouTube star. So, Alonso, this video's for you.